All right, so part two of this podcast, this episode, I want to put the gaming segments, gaming conversation together. So I will start talking about the Aya Neo handheld PC gaming device, which didn't really hear of until I saw a video review about it, and I thought it was pretty cool. It is mainly a very impressive piece of gaming handheld technology, and I do think it'll compete very well with Valve's Steam Deck, which I think was released earlier this year. Although it seems like the Aya Neo handheld gaming has been around for a while, and you know, regarding the dedicated, high advanced handheld gaming systems, it's nice that there's some sort of resurgence or renaissance of handheld games technology that's been around despite a market that has been no doubt been dominated by mobile devices, and even more so like people playing games on tablets. So it's nice to see that there's something like this, despite the fact that even with the Aya Neo Next Advance, for example, it does come with a very, very steep and expensive price tag that I will mention, as very much so. But one of the more significant differences, other than the specs I will mention, is that the Aya Neo Next Advance does use the Windows OS, whereas the Steam Deck, some people may be aware, uses the Linux OS. Linux is still a thing for laptops and computers. It's just obviously not as popular as, the Windows 10, even now with the Windows 11, the Mac OS, especially on the more powerful MacBooks with the M1 chip. So it's still a very important software, especially for companies that have uses, whether it's for music making, film editing, social media, graphic design, whatever it may be. It's still very much important. And even some of the Io Neo models have used like Io Neo Air and Io Neo Pro, which to me coincidentally is kind of has like those similar nicknames or subtitle names or whatever, like model names for like the iMac. So this was just something that got my attention. Although if there's one thing that not just the IO Neo, but even especially the Steam Deck, if there's one thing that both have in common is that they really do take a lot of the inspiration from the Nintendo Switch. Like even since its release in March 2017, has sold into one of the top five best-selling of all time, and even better, an incredibly, incredibly affordable price at 300, starting at $300 and even lower. Or if you're going for the OLED, like 350. So Switches can be sold for not even 400, way below that price tag. That's very amazing. So yeah, the specs based on like a chart I found from an IGN video review when talking about Io Neo Next, just a few things came to mind. I noticed immediately with the RAM, it's very similar. It's actually the same. I should say, like they're both of them like at 16 gigabytes with Io Neo Next Advance with like 16 gigabyte DDR4X 4266 with the Steam Deck 16 gigabyte LP DDR5 5500. And both of them still have solid battery life. Io Neo with 47 watts per hour and the Steam Deck 40 watts per hour. Although the GPU, as you can expect with the Io Neo, also significantly more powerful. Although they still use integrated AMD graphics cards. Io Neo Next Advanced does use 2 gigahertz versus the Steam Deck's 1.6 gigahertz. So there's a somewhat of a difference as well. Processing, I think the CPU is probably the more interesting part. Although both of them have AMD, but Steam Deck does use a custom AMD APU with a Zen 2 4-core 8-thread CPU chip, whereas Aya Neo Next Advance does have a significantly better CPU chip with an AMD Ryzen 7 5800U with an 8-core 16-thread, so that's a much more powerful chip with the clock speed at 1.9 gigahertz base clock, and it can be boosted to 4.4 gigahertz with the boost clock. Although the Steam Deck's clock speed can be like from 2.4 gigahertz at its base up to 3.5 gigahertz. So you could see where it goes there. And even the more interesting part, the storage size. The Io Next Advanced can store up to 2 terabytes with using the NVMe. Maybe some people might remember or know those really thin NVMe drives versus a 64 gigabyte eMMC from Steam Deck. So that's more important to note. If Although both are pretty good, but the more eye-popping and concerning part is the very steep price tag that I mentioned earlier, because the Io Next can go up to $1,365, which is crazy, crazy expensive. And quite frankly, the price tag like that is hard to justify. I'm certain that there's probably a bit more budget friendly price tags. I doubt that all of these Io Neo models are like $1,000 and higher. Even if it's like 600, 700, that's understandable. Steam Deck also has various price tags, even a bit higher, but manageable in some ways. So at least like that's a good thing from the Steam Deck. And for the most part, it seems like you're gonna be happy anyway with the Steam Deck, and it can be sort of connected to your laptop, sort of like a base dock with what you can do with the Switch and the TV mode. So that's a good thing. And again, like both of them can function in a similar vein to the Nintendo Switch. So you can see where their inspiration has come from. And Nintendo does deserve credit for at least encouraging some kind of handheld PC gaming portable system instead of just relying on mobile. There's only so much mobile can do. So it's great that if you want to play, for example, Doom Eternal portably, yes, you can on the Switch. That is true, but at a much higher resolution, better, cleaner textures, faster loading, much higher frame rates. So those devices can do that. Even Control, for example, from Remedy Entertainment, or Hideo Kojima's Death Stranding as another example of that's been showcased. So that's a very good example. But yeah, like, although Steam Deck, yes, it can be connected to an external monitor, the Io Neo Next Advance is kind of more for the handheld gaming thing as well. Okay, so another thing I quickly want to talk about is a couple of former Sony developers known as Michael Mumbauer and John Gavin. They are coming together, establishing a new gaming studio of their own. They're calling it Lithios. So and they're going to debut their first game called Asphalt as their first Web 3.0 AAA title for PC, console, and Hedera network, whatever it is. But it's like a blockchain gaming idea. So it's basically like an NFT game, but with a really high budget. And it's kind of strange how both of them came together. For Mumbauer, yes, he did work at, no, actually, I think one of them was at Bend Studio, but one of them did work, both of them, I should say, were Sony gaming developers. Mumbauer was a founder of That's No Moon gaming company and left less than a year later. But as for John Garvin, he was a creative developer for a couple of Sony games at Bend, I think Siphon Filter. I don't think Days Gone was one of them, but something else as well. He was fired for I don't know how long for being a disruptive personality. He did admit in an IGN podcast interview that he did have a lot of heated arguments, and he blames himself for not being a people's person, so I'm sure he's grown from that. But Ashfall, for as long as we know, is just described as like an open world game set in a ravaged land by global warming, mysterious energy fields, and wearing enclaves. But it does have a narrative driven single player, so that's a good thing. But it will evolve into like a PvP and PvE kind of game, and be part of the Hedera network, which is like a blockchain system that allows players to build. So I sell and trade with exclusivity being a focus. So again, how the NFT gaming stuff can be integrated together, I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me. But whatever. Even like with scavenging elements and even discovering NFTs in the game. So that's kind of weird. They intend to work together more than just on video game and cinematic entertainment gaming studio sort of thing. So they've known each other for a couple of decades. I do have a quote, but don't want to go through it. They've known each other for a couple of decades, and they're taking this chance really to just create something new and exciting together, and that's good for them. You know, it's kind of like a bringing back the band together sort of style of two people that have a friendship, know each other well, and want to do something special. So I think that's really good. And creating beloved characters, captivating stories, evolutionary gameplay, and worlds worth exploring. And they hope to do so not just in video games. So, you know, they sound like they have a good vision. If they can take a lot of good things from here to wherever it can go, you know, great. The only thing I'm worried about is the heavy use of microtransactions for an NFT type game. Again, I really don't know other gaming companies like maybe Sega and Square Enix. There was talk of them maybe getting themselves involved in any sort of NFT gaming integration, gaming systems, whatever it may be. But I'm not sure if it'll go beyond that. But it'll be a bit of a costly concern if so much NFT gaming will be integrated into AAA gaming budgets, whether from Sony, although I don't think it will, or from independent teams that are trying to get involved.